The F-150 Lightning is one of the most hotly anticipated electric vehicles, or really any vehicle, on the market here in 2022. And we are excited to finally be putting the range of this extended range Lariat model to the test on our highway loop. Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and today we've got the real-world highway efficiency and range test on the 2022 Ford F-150 Lightning. Today's test, we're going to head out and do 50 miles out and 50 miles back, averaging 70 miles per hour to get a realistic range number for this full-size electric truck. For those of you who have been living under an automotive rock for the last year, the F-150 Lightning is an all-electric version of the most popular passenger vehicle sold in the US market for something like the last 20 or 30 years. The F-150 outsells everything else by a hearty margin, and it's clear to see why. It provides a lot from an emotional aspect, from a utility aspect, from just an affordability aspect in certain cases, but now from an efficiency aspect as well. The fact that you can get America's best-selling vehicle in an all-electric form. Now this is, strangely enough, one of the most affordable, but I shouldn't say most affordable, maybe most practical builds of the F-150 Lightning. It's a Lariat. It's not too full of options. It's coming out on the sticker for this 2022 model about $80,000, but I think with the recent price jump from Ford, this would be about $86,000 for a 23 model. So very expensive, but it's also getting you a lot. It's got 320 miles of estimated mixed driving range. I think for the highway, you should only be expecting about 280 or so from the EPA's numbers, but we're going to find out if you actually see that in real-world driving at higher speeds. Now, a few reasons this test is particularly interesting is because larger vehicles don't tend to do as well as smaller, more aerodynamic vehicles at higher speeds because of the exponential nature of wind resistance against the frontal area of the truck. As speed increases, air resistance doubles essentially. So it's an exponential relationship, and therefore a large vehicle like this should be that much more inefficient at higher speeds than something like the i4 eDrive 40 that we just tested earlier this week, which did really, really well. So all that yapping out of the way, let's unplug this thing and get going. Take our grizzly charger out here and put it haphazardly back on the ground. That's the proper storage. Quick side note, I do like how for the level 2 charging plug, Ford doesn't put any sort of cap over it. I find it unnecessary when level 2 chargers have something you got to open up. Just, oops, come on. Close that maybe? Why? Okay. Didn't want to stay closed. And let's get this thing going. A few things to note for today. Outside temperature is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Our tire pressures have been set to their door placard 36 PSI cold. And we're going to run the climate control at 73 degrees auto. Now, yes, that will sap our range a little bit, but that's how people would travel here in the real world. And without it, we would roast. Get our easy entry seat and wheel going. No sort of cabin preconditioning, so I'm going to reset trip 1. Get our climate going at 73 auto. I'm going to do low fan. There we are. No heated seat or cooled seat. GPS has been reset. And we're ready to roll. We do have a few different drive modes in the F-150 Lightning. Interestingly, no eco mode. We just have normal, sport, off-road, and tow. So we're going to just run this test in eco. And I've got about 2 miles from my house to the highway. So we're going to pick up the test from there. I should mention that we're leaving with a full charge, and the vehicle, even with our climate control running, is saying we have a range of 323 miles. It's so cool to get in a vehicle and see something like that. We've been averaging, let me go over to trip 2 miles per kilowatt hour over the last 50 miles or so with this truck, but that does include shooting some of our winding road test videos, which means we've been hard on the accelerator and the brake. So I think you should be able to achieve 2 miles per kilowatt hour with no difficulty in mixed driving. Probably even some more than that. But on the highway, we should probably be only expecting about 1.8, maybe up to 2 miles per kilowatt hour cruising at highway speeds. So let's get out to the highway and see what happens. Now the goal of this test isn't to hypermile. We're not trying to get the best possible range out of this truck, but rather a realistic number, something that you can expect if you were to get an F-150 Lightning and just head out on the highway and take a road trip. This is what you should be able to pull out of the truck without trying too hard. So in order to do that, we're getting up to highway speed here at a reasonable pace, and we're going to set our cruise control at a GPS indicated 72 miles per hour. That should allow us to average about 70 over the whole trip. One thing I love about the F-150 Lightning is how quiet it is. You just sit and listen. You pretty much just hear a light whoosh of wind on top of a few expansion joints. That is how I like to travel. Oh, Blue Cruise is on, so we get to try that a little bit over this test as well. Cool. We can go hands-free. Yeah. This will be interesting to sort of report on as well, especially since we just did the Silverado with Super Cruise not too long ago. Looks like our GPS is reading 1 mile per hour below the car's speedo, so we're going to set at 73. And yeah, chill out for the next hour and a half or so. I'll catch up with you at the end. In the meantime, enjoy this time lapse of the entire trip.
It's not a game, it's a rage thing.
Coming into the end of the highway range test here in the F-150 Platinum Extended Range, I feel like there's quite a bit to talk about. It's been a nice highway cruiser. I've definitely enjoyed the drive. It's been nice and easy. Seats are pretty comfortable. Got it reclined back a good bit. A lot of adjustment. Nice and quiet. Blue Cruise works well as a semi-autonomous driving function. It's not as good as Super Cruise. It's not as good as Tesla's autopilot. It can't change lanes for you. It can't even change lanes if you hit the steering, the lane change, the turn signal stalk, and it won't change lanes over. But it does follow its lane pretty well. I did notice, it's on right now, it does a lot of little adjustments, micro adjustments in the lane. It doesn't feel as confident as a lot of the other semi-autonomous driving functionalities. But it is nice to have, just don't think that it's at the same level as Super Cruise, especially the more advanced Super Cruise. It might be a little bit more comparable to Super Cruise that you get in something like a full TUV that is also incapable of changing lanes. But you see it disconnect, it just kind of cancels itself, and then it'll come right back on automatically there. One thing that's also a tad strange is I haven't found a way to bring up the battery percentage without being on Blue Cruise. So you see right now it says 68%, shows me my battery percentage as a number. But if you disable Blue Cruise, if I do, what's the best way to do this? Just do this. Then the percentage goes away, and it just shows me that little ring. And I don't know, maybe there's some way to bring up your percentage, but I'm gonna have to figure that out when we get stopped. What else? In terms of the actual range, we've done 95 miles. We're at 67%. So it's actually coming in fairly close to a 300-mile range. Now, obviously, you wouldn't want to push it that close because we're in pretty ideal conditions right now. In fact, if we go here to Trip Energy, it tells us that 97% of our range or energy has been used up by driving, 2% by climate use, and 2% by accessories. And you keen mathematicians watching Daily Motor will realize that that adds up to 101% rather than 100%. I'm sure it's some sort of rounding error, but you'd think Ford's engineers could have put in some sort of fail-safe where it said, do these numbers all add up to 100%, and if not, just drop one of them down ambiguously. Take the nearest rounding. You could have done the math properly and gotten that all to equal 100, but now we're at 100% because driving has dropped down to 96. Little silly Ford things, I suppose. We're at about a third of the battery used up after just under 100 miles. That would get us right up over near 300. We've got 1.9 miles per kilowatt hour. We're going back and forth between 1.9 and 2 miles per kilowatt hour based on the 131 kilowatt hour battery. That means we'd only be doing about 260 miles of range. So I think your sweet spot's going to be 260 to be safe, maybe 280 after we do our math. But we're going to get off the highway, get back to our house, charge this all the way up, and then based on the electricity put into the vehicle by our charger, we're going to get a full number. I realize that I feel like I've been rambling a lot wrapping this one up, but I just feel like there's a lot to talk about as well. A lot of people are curious, can I get an F-150 Lightning and go do a road trip? And there's a lot to be talked about with that. So hope you find it all informative. But let's get this thing back, crunch some numbers, and see what we get. Back at the house, all charged up the next morning. 301 miles of range showing up on the dash, 100% obviously. But we know that we traveled 101.7 miles yesterday on the highway. A few miles of that obviously in between. And based on the amount of electricity we put into the truck, we can calculate our miles per kilowatt hour. So we did 101.7 miles divided by 47.97.
I'm leaning toward A tier for this
Hush
one.
yourself, Charlie. 47.97 kilowatts gone into the truck, giving us 2.12 miles per kilowatt hour, cruised on the highway at 70 miles per hour. That's not too bad. And also, why is my heat on high? Why would I ever have that? All right, can you just calm down? Yeesh. We take the 2.12 miles per kilowatt hour, kilowatt hour. Gosh, electric units, man. Times the 131 kilowatt hour battery pack, you're looking at an effective highway cruising range of just over 270 miles at highway speeds here in the F-150 Lightning extended range. That's really quite good for this size of vehicle. I think getting at least 2 miles per kilowatt hour is decent. Now, I would err on the side of not really planning on going any further than 260 miles because you got to give yourself a little bit of buffer room. And if you're running a little bit faster, not drafting people as much, if the temperature's different outside, maybe you're charging devices or powering something else, the radio, I don't know. Just be a little careful. But hey, even being able to go 260 miles in a truck this smooth and nice and efficient to drive, it's going to be much cheaper than gasoline, typically. At least charging at home, maybe not DC fast charging, but charging at home be much cheaper and just so smooth to drive. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the F-150 Lightning, check the links in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.